For more on the NBA and the Heat, we bring in our insider, Ethan Skolnick, the CEO of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Ethan, we now know Kyrie Irving is officially off the board. How realistic of a fit would he have been here in Miami?
Not particularly realistic. I mean, from a basketball standpoint, if you're talking about a guy to get you buckets, which is one of the things that they need, they're one of the worst offensive teams in the league, then sure. But I was told that the organization was never comfortable with him long term. If you weren't going to be giving him an extension for the long term, whether it was 2 years or whatever it was, then there was no reason to bring him in for as a rental and give up significant assets. So the Heat weren't willing to do that.
The piece that the brass for the Heat decided to give money to was Kyle Lowry. He's now in his second year of a 3-year, $75 million deal. Ethan, why hasn't he worked on the court?
I think there's a lot of reasons. We saw him work sometimes last year when the other guys were out. And I thought that Kyle, with the ball in his hands, played pretty well. But a few things have happened since. One, the hamstring that I think he hurt at the end, toward the end of last season. I don't know if that's all healed all the way. Also, he's just had trouble fitting in a starting lineup where you have other guys who are not point guards who need the ball in their hands too. I mean, it's not just Jimmy and Bam now, but it's also Tyler Hero. I feel kind of like, we've already seen what they're going to do with him. They're not playing him down the stretch of games. Eric Spoelstra's not using him in the fourth quarter at all, even when he's healthy. So, maybe he'll continue to start, but honestly, that's because they don't really feel like they have a better option at this stage. So it just has not worked out very well with Kyle.
A chance by Thursday to go ahead and get another option before the trade deadline. Ethan, what are you hearing?
They're looking. I mean, they're talking to everybody. I mean, I've heard about Utah, and I've heard about Minnesota, and I've talked about the Clippers, and I've heard about Toronto. One of the issues right now in the league, you don't really know who's buying and who's selling. And so I think it's going to come right up into the trade deadline. From the Heat's perspective, look, they're looking for a power forward who they can play down the stretch of games. No question about that. And they need more shooting. They're a bad shooting team this year. It's not going to progress to the mean like everybody thought it would. This is who they are now. They are a bad shooting team. They need to find another guy who can make something from the outside.
Ethan, we look back just realistically 8 months ago, this team was one shot away from the NBA Finals. When do we say that this year's group is not a championship caliber team?
I think we can say that already. I mean, they're 2/3 of the way into the season. 2/3 of the way, 54 games. That's where they're at. I mean, you are what your record says you are. I don't think they're that far away from at least entering the fringe of that category, but they need a couple of additions. And I don't know that they can make the additions while also trying to cost cut. The East is not as good as everybody expected, but Milwaukee and Boston are still formidable. We saw that this Saturday. So that's the decision that they need to make in my mind. I think they will make a marginal addition and try to sell it as maybe something more than that. I don't know that they can make the move that's going to put them in the conference finals.
So then what would you consider as a successful season this year for the Heat?
I mean, you want to avoid the play-in to start. You definitely don't want to be in the play-in. So get in the top 6. They can get in the top 4, but they got to be much more consistent than this. And you can't have a road trip where, we can talk about the loss to Milwaukee. Everybody knew they were going to lose to Milwaukee, okay? But the loss to Charlotte, Bam, who's been absolutely tremendous, but he didn't really show up in that game. And then Jimmy, who's been otherwise tremendous, doesn't show up in the New York game. They can't have that. The rest of the team is not good enough to survive that. So I think it's stay out of the play-in, try to win a first-round series, and try to reshape it over the summer. They can turn things around with Eric Spoelstra, but I think he's maximized the group that he has.
This is why we have you on the show, Ethan. Thank you as always for the time.
Thank you, Josh.